Hi, guys. Welcome to District 216. Can I get a round of applause for the District 216 team that has put together, once again, an amazing event. You can't see it yet, but this place is going to be like a psychedelic playground just as the lights go down here. And who here, first time District 216? We got a lot of first timers. All right, welcome. My name is Kat Walsh. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm also going to be DJing. I'm going to be moderating. So you're going to see me here kind of shepherding us through this process. But before I get into that, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what you're going to be experiencing here tonight. And I've got quite a few announcements, but I do want to first shout out the Roots brand. Because Tammy Boyer in the Roots brand is giving away 4 $25 gift cards tonight, she's right inside here, and I just want to make sure that if everybody wants that, to go in and talk to her about that. The Roots brand is a cutting-edge, all-natural nootropic adaptogen developed by a nanotechnologist and bioscience engineer. Think Adderall, but without the synthetics and without the crash or side effects. There is also a detox protocol that is helped for heavy metals, mold, mycotoxins, parasites, fungal overgrowth, and it can help with pineal gland decalcification, which boosts the natural DMT, gut lining and junction repair, and elevated dopamine and serotonin levels. So if that sounds interesting, if you're looking for kind of a natural Adderall, something that helps you focus, check out Tammy inside. All right. What to expect tonight? First, we start off with education. So we're going to have a fireside chat. We're going to have a panel. All throughout this, there's going to be sampling inside, so you can check out any of the sponsors anytime. Also, upstairs is a terpene lounge. So this first half is going to be all around the education. So when you're leaving here, you feel like you actually have some valuable tools. And then we're going to kick it off into a dance party. So to me, I want to just say, there's actually a stat right now that the best thing for mental health that they have found is dancing, specifically to electronic music. So don't worry, I have a proper house music set later tonight. So if you want to actually see the real effects, especially after some sampling, indulge us. All right. You guys ready? Yeah. All right, any feedback, folks? All right. Thank you. Okay, first things first, very important. We got hats, folks. District 216 has hats. This is one of the custom hats that you have in here. There's also 4 or 5 other ones. This is one of the ways that you can support District 216. So if there is anything, especially this gentleman's got one right here and it looks awesome. Pointing you out, yes, it looks great. We also have dinner and a show. Thank you so much to Blue Owl Catering for serving us. Food was awesome tonight. Thank you. After this, we're going to have a discussion from Jacob. Then we're going to do a fireside chat. There will be a discussion panel. And then there's going to be live music from Mr. Eos and a guest opener with Father Atlas at 8 p.m. And then at 9 p.m., I'll be coming on to do a house music set, which this one I wanted to do proper. It's a little bit darker. It's a little bit we're kind of going to go there. Sometimes I keep it lighty fluffy. Sometimes I keep it a little more disco. Tonight, we're just going to go all in. So just a little heads up. If you haven't been to a rave before, you might start tonight, okay? Also, what you're going to see behind me, it's daylight, so unfortunately we can't see it yet, but there's going to be amazing visual projections behind me. And what's amazing with Michael Strauss, who's going to be doing this, is he does them live. So oftentimes he'll be listening to what we're saying or, whatever the topic is, and he'll actually go through an unbelievable catalog to then come up with actually what is going to be projected onto the screen. So it's really cool. It doesn't happen to just be up here. There's this purpose, all right? So there's also going to be projection mapping everywhere, like I was mentioning. Shout out to Tim, Amun, Udu, and Tay, who are all going to be, you're going to see everything that they're doing here tonight. All right, so we also have workshops. So there's obviously any time that you come to an event, as much as you want to get involved with the experience is how much you're going to remember it. So we've got two workshops tonight, mind-body integration with Stone, and then Ondu micro sessions, which is somatic sound with Shane. It's upstairs workshops, everything upstairs. So if you want to get involved, sign up upstairs. As you might have noticed, there's no alcohol at District 216, but that doesn't mean we don't have fun around here. And for those cannabis smokers, right up here we have a terpene lounge. Shout out to Golden State Canada that is always coming through with the best flower. So if you want to go up there, enjoy a joint, meet a friend, great, you know? Also, yes, behind us we have Golden Path, which is a microdose like bar, basically. Like think of microdose cocktails without the alcohol. So you can either do with the microdose or without. So definitely check them out. And also Sunstone Cannabis. All right, we also have the Shiftware Chair experience upstairs. So these are an 18 microprocessor controlled driver that pulses pressure waves throughout the body. And what this does is it essentially helps us reset our nervous system. It reduces inflammation and pain, and it helps restore sleep function. So if you are at the Terpene Lounge and you want to find your way to a vibrating chair, enjoy that. Inside, we also have sponsors. If you haven't noticed, the sponsors are what helps make this go round, right? And not only are they just here supporting it, but they're quite literally some of the best psychedelic products that there are. From experience, I'm just telling you guys, like, these are some of the best that are here. And so what's nice is it's not just anyone, like so much with like psychedelics is where are you getting it from? What is it? Is it good? Is it, you know, something that I wouldn't want to consume? And everything is here is vetted, which is really nice. So definitely say hello. And also everybody here is also an expert in much of the space. So many resources are here by talking to the sponsors about set and setting, about dosage, about when is this the proper setting for you, right? Checking in and making sure, like, are you an alone person? Would you rather not sample with a bunch of people? Or would you rather be inclusive in something like this where everybody's on your level? We also have Spirit Spores and Kate Gold's Empowerment, which is here outside. And then we have Mr. Eos's merch table out here somewhere. Right over here in the back left. Yes, excellent. All right, we have membership VIP gift bags as well. So if you're not a member of District 216, it's not just about these events. There's actually an event every Wednesday here where they have speakers that come in, and it's an intimate setting where you get to actually really be a part of the community. You get to really meet people, and people that are like really just open-minded and want to be in this space. And then also, if you're not being able to be here on Wednesdays, you get everything recorded. So that's great. And if you sign up tonight, we have amazing gift bags with lots of goodies thanks to our sponsors. We also have been adding media partners here, which also goes to show with Jacob and the district team how much this is growing. We have Psychedelics Today, who is now a media partner. I don't know if you know Psychedelics Today. It's one of the biggest podcasts in the psychedelic space that there is that is now involved. We have Shrooms Near Me, and we have Reality Sandwich that is all here making sure that everyone knows about these events. All right, and finally, LoDo Studios is supported by so many amazing artists that are here. And I just want to do a quick rundown of all the incredible artists that have made this such a beautiful space. We've got Robbie that's going to be upstairs on the balcony. He's going to be doing some live painting, so if you want to check that out, please do. Oriol Anais has got a beautiful human form collection in the gallery. We have Marco Pinter's kinetic painting in here, Alter Beast Lab and Decelerator Lightsmith we have Urute, Michael Strauss, as I mentioned, Full Moon Audio, Mike Wald, Luke Archer, Emma Claire, and Honorcron, and of course, the people that have made this event possible, King Kubiak and Tori Campman. Thank you so much, Vesper Post. I would say a good event is when you don't know. It should just seamlessly go into everything, so that's how we know. All right, now I want to invite up Stone to set a group intention because, as we know, so much about the psychedelic experience is being intentional before we just start popping samples to just kind of get an idea of why we're here. So I want to introduce Stone. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see so many smiling, beautiful faces all gathered here on what I consider to be the most important topic of our time today. Obviously, we know there's this massive mental health epidemic. And to me, in my own life, I have experienced directly the healing power of psychedelics in my mind, and my life has been radically transformed from that. So really grateful for all of you having that interest in being here today. And I'm going to kick us off with some light breath work to tune us all into our bodies, into our minds, and then also to tune into the space and the environment and the energy that we're creating here. So And you can do this standing as well. If you're standing, you can still participate. So go ahead. Place one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest. Feel your weight on the chair beneath you. Feel your feet making contact with the ground. Just allow your body to completely relax. And place the tip of the tongue behind the front teeth, but not touching them, on the roof of the mouth. And we want to do an inhale where we're inhaling with the first 2/3 of the breath, filling up the belly, the side ribs, and the lower back. And then the final third, filling up the chest. So you can place your hand on your belly and breathing in through the nose, gently filling up our belly, side ribs, back, chest. And then exhale again through the nose. We want to bring our awareness to the point right between the eyebrows. And as we inhale and exhale, we want to visualize the air coming in through our third eye. Continuing with the breath, feeling into our body, relaxing all the muscles in the shoulders, in the face, in the ears and scalp. Tuning into the environment we're creating here in this space. And I want to share a brief meditation that I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Zen monk. And so on your next inhale, I want you to repeat after me in your mind. Inhale, I calm my body. Exhale, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. So we'll just take a few more breaths here, feeling the love that we have together in this space, feeling the intentions of us coming together to spread this important information, to bring healing to ourselves, our family, and the world. Inhale, I calm my body. Exhale, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. So thank you guys all for being here. I'm going to pass the mic on. And I encourage you guys to practice that breathing as much as you can. That's really what a normal human breath looks like. And anytime we're finding ourselves stressed or anxious or going through challenges in life, we always have the ability to tune in with our breath, tune in with our body, and regulate our nervous system just by breathing. So I'm going to pass it over to Jacob here, and he's going to kick us off and get things official.
Yes, bud. Yeah, Jacob.
Thank you, Stone. Welcome, everyone. Let's get the energy up. Come on, welcome, everyone. All right. I know a lot of first-time people, but this is edutainment. We want to have fun, too. We're going to learn stuff, I promise. Okay. So, for those new people, I have a little, some slides over here, and we're going to show a couple videos as well. But what is a psychedelic social club? We're centered around community, healing, learning, and consciousness expansion through art, music, cannabis, and psychedelics. So tonight is our 9th Marquee event. We started in January of 2023. Thank you. And really all 8 previous to this had the mental wellness component. But so this is a culmination where we decided to focus and shift the lens directly on mental wellness and psychedelics. So here we go. I'm excited for the lineup, and I got a few words to share, and then we're going to see some videos from actually speakers that we've had here on Wednesday nights. Try to tie it all together. So tonight we open the door wider to the potential of psychedelics to transform how we understand and support mental wellness. We're here because 20th century ways are not enough, and we're dreaming of a society where mental health is a focus and every possible tool at its disposal. Mental health systems are stretched thin. They're often prioritize symptom control over soul healing. Symptoms are prescribed to, and the pharmaceutical industry loves this, especially when those prescriptions come at every week or a month. But people are seeking more. We're seeking connection and meaning and a real relief that actually lasts. At District216, we often reinforce that psychedelics are not a quick fix, but they can invite us to feel, to process, and ultimately to transform. So psychedelics have been integrated into humanity's way of life for thousands of years until fear-based campaigns of colonial and religious institutions demonized these sacred plants, animals, and fungi. Hundreds of years after that, once again, this time the Nixon administration stigmatized psychedelics with their racist and fear-based war on drugs. I've mentioned this before. I think it's a theme that's worth mentioning every single time. But now research and tradition and lived experience are converging. This is the third wave now of psychedelics, as this is reemergence. Some people call it a renaissance. So I wanted to make sure that we had three compounds in particular make their way into the conversation tonight. LSD, MDMA, and Ibogaine. These are all powerful in their own ways, and so I'm going to play 3 short video clips around each one of these. We've hosted fascinating interviews on Wednesday nights for the last 2.5 years, and so the first 2 videos are actually clips from our own interviews, and then there's a bonus of Hamilton Morris, because I'm a big fanboy of his, and we'll eventually get him here. Without further ado, we're going to first hear about LSD. This is a UCLA neuroscientist, Dr. Connor Murray. He actually ran a study at the University of Chicago about LSD microdosing, the first of its kind.
Okay, so what do we see in the brain in terms of microdosing? There's been a couple different studies that have come out, and then I'll show you some unpublished data. This was the first one that we did at the University of Chicago with a technique called fMRI. With fMRI, you can see where in the brain there is activation. In this particular case, they're just having someone go into these fMRI scanners, and they just sit there silently. They're not doing anything. It's called resting state. What they found was that there was an increase in connection, which is basically just 2 regions of the brain being active at the same time, increase in their connectivity in 2 important brain regions. One is the prefrontal cortex, which is where you have cognition, executive function, and another one is the amygdala, which is where you have emotional responses like fear responses. And that's what they're showing on this bottom line, that x-axis there. You can see amygdala to MFG is medial frontal gyrus connectivity. So there's increased connectivity. You can think about this as being the logical part of your brain, that frontal executive control part of your brain, controlling the emotional reactivity part of your brain. And so when you have this increased connectivity, you usually see that with someone's ability to have some cognitive control, top-down control is what they refer to it. Top being higher regions of the brain, down on the amygdala, control over your emotional states. They saw that the more connected these brain regions were, the more top-down control they had, the more positive mood the participants were reporting. So you can see that on the y-axis there, the positive mood, LSD minus placebo. These are the participants in the study. Each point on this graph is a participant, each one showing this correlation between this increase in positive mood and this increase in connectivity of these regions. To me, this is kind of like the microdose saying, I've got this under control. Like everything's going to be okay. It's that logical part of your brain is intact and it's highly functioning, and sending those top-down signals down to the amygdala, telling the amygdala, chill out. I got this. Everything's fine. If you don't have that frontal part of your brain intact, then you have this disinhibited amygdala that's running around, screaming or something like that, I imagine. So this is my interpretation of these data, and why I think it's important to talk about here.
We are making neuroscience sexy again, right? Come on. Who is not a fan? We're going to be learning some stuff tonight. I told you that. Okay, next up, this is MDMA therapy. This was a talk called The Healing of Joy. Jane Garnett and Stephanie Carzone. Jane is an Oxford-educated marriage and family therapist, also EMDR therapist, and Stephanie Carzone is a pharmacologist and researcher. And so they're bridging essentially the clinical setting use of therapeutic use of MDMA with the communal recreational setting of MDMA. And this is pretty cool. So take a look.
I'm bridging these gaps basically between, traditional therapy, which is focused on brokenness, and what we're learning from psychedelics, which is we can have experiences of wholeness. And so from this position, from this research position, I find myself back on the dance floor, kind of like 20 years after I used to be, raging in the early days, when I overdid it, and thought MDMA was terrible. Then I'm coming back to the dance floor with these sort of psychologist eyes going like, holy fuck. There are all these therapeutic principles being applied here. What's working in therapy, what's working in EMDR is working on the dance floor, but like exponentially. Because, okay, what have we got? We've got people looking in each other's eyes. We've got connection. We've got that felt sense of safety. When you take MDMA and you're in a room full of people, you're like, here we are. There's presence, there's safety, there's containment. All these things you're getting in therapy, right? Seeing and being seen. This is very, very healing, being accepted. But you've also got celebration. You've also got embodiment. You've got bilateral stimulation from dancing on the floor. It's like, wait a minute, we're talking about MDMA for like PTSD, that's great, but like what about for the collective? What about collective PTSD? What about collective healing? So this is where I'm at in the journey, super turned on by this sort of pairing of these elements of joy and these elements of education. So I've got to find out more. This brings me to Stephanie. I'm like, I need some people who know about the fucking science and who also know how to have fun. And
science is fun.
And so this is fun. So we're having fun.
So the interesting thing about MDMA is that it is going to play on three major neurotransmitters or neurochemicals. So you have serotonin, which is known to be mood stabilizer, an uplifting neurotransmitter. You have dopamine, which is motivation and reward. And then you have norepinephrine, very energetic. And what's interesting about MDMA especially is this parallel activation of dopamine and serotonin at the same time, which means that not only are you coming from a place where your heart is open, but every interaction that you have with another person or with a therapist, guide, facilitator is rewarded by that dopaminergic effect, right? So it's like you're encouraged to keep having these amazing, profound interactions and having trust in the people around you, whether they're your friends or they're your guides or facilitators, is a key component to the success of MDMA therapeutically. And then when we use it in a recreational setting, which I'm going to just say is very healing because joy and happiness and connection is healing, you are essentially replicating that same concept that you will find in a doctor's office or in a therapist's office, right? Where if someone has PTSD and is using MDMA as a tool to heal that PTSD, they're changing the narrative around that trauma, right? The trauma is a dysfunctional response to an event that happened. Not every negative event is traumatic, but in the case of PTSD, there is an event that has become traumatic. There's a maladaptive way of responding to these triggers, and you need to remove the emotional load and experience joy.
All right, give it up for Jane and Steph. They're here in spirit tonight. Steph's been on the stage a few times. Some of you may remember her. And then last but not least, we have Ibogaine. This plant medicine is quite intense. It's one of the most powerful tools that we have for addiction recovery. The compound yields to the, quote, like 10 years of therapy in one night sort of anecdotes that you might hear out there. But it has to be handled with reverence, support, and expert care. So let's hear briefly from one of my favorite journalists, documentarian, and scientific researchers Hamilton Morris described the unique powers of Ibogaine.
Ibogaine is a drug with so much potential. It's typically only discussed as a drug that treats addiction to opioids, which is very, very important, especially now. But that's the tip of the iceberg with Ibogaine. It has one of the most complex pharmacologies of any drug I've ever studied. There's almost nothing it does not do. You have the alpha-3 beta-4 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, which is also the target of Wellbutrin and has a kind of smoking cessation, anti-addictive effect. Then you have really high affinity relative to the other receptors for the NMDA receptor, so it has a ketamine type effect. And it has a classical psychedelic effect at the 5-HT2A receptor. Then it's a dopamine reuptake inhibitor, serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It just goes on, and then it releases this protein, GDNF, which is considered one of the most important proteins in treatment of Parkinson's disease. It's one of the only things that is able to cause regrowth of dopaminergic neurons in people that have Parkinson's. So this is like really fascinating stuff that's just in Schedule 1. Scientists can't work with it. It's a tragedy.
So, like we are here tonight, psychedelics require education and a safe space to have conversations to ensure that this third wave of psychedelics is not canceled by colonial, religious, or political institutions. This new model of healing is the old model. District 216 is here as a community to support society's shifts from managing symptoms, numbing pain, and navigating broken systems to living a transformed and fulfilled life. So thank you all for being here. All right, enough of this. So, we're in our third year. I always like to show for the new people, you get to see this for the first time. Sorry for those of you who've already seen these slides, but we got to get a lot of mileage out of them. Year one, here's a nice graphic of 55 events that we've hosted here in this space at LoDo Studios. Many of them are these Wednesday night gatherings that we have. We'll talk a bit about the formats in a moment. Sometimes 3 times a year, 4 times a year, we're doing these marquee events. Year two, somehow we landed on that same number, 55. That was not planned. And we're at, I don't know, another couple dozen already this year. Tonight is 133rd event in 2.5 years. So thank you for being a part of this. Hope you can come back for more. Do we have anything cool coming up? Actually, Jeremy's here tonight. I don't know where he is, but there he is. He's waving his hands. So Jeremy's going to be here Wednesday, and he's going to be running a really cool live study on music meditation. And so this is an interactive study. We're going to have people in the room that are actually participating with him as he gathers some data and is working on a pretty awesome thing. I'll let him talk Wednesday. So please, this is actually a free event. You can RSVP through our website. We'd love to have you. And then the bigger events, we are actually going out to Denver. We're taking District 216 on the road for the first time next month. I know Kat is going to be there because she is our director of fun for both nights of this. Literally, that's her title. I know Dr. Remi Drozd is going to be out there as well. Many of you may be considering coming to the MAPS conference. It is officially called Psychedelic Science. It's every other year. In 2023, they had 13,000 people from around the world gathering around psychedelics. I don't know if they're going to have that many this time because MDMA did not pass clinical trials by the FDA last summer. And so that was a big kind of bummer for a lot of the industry. But we are producing 2 off-campus events. We're doing a small business-to-business gathering on the 17th on Tuesday, and then Wednesday is going to be kind of like this, edutainment. Kat's got a huge lineup of music planned. We have speakers, we have panels. It's going to be pretty cool. 950 capacity venue, a little bit bigger than this, so we'll see what happens. And then back here in Santa Barbara, our last marquee of the year, Death and Psychedelics. It's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about end of life. We're going to talk about ego death and all things in between. And time for the shameless plug. Thanks for your attention. We have memberships, as Kat mentioned, 4 different tiers. We do online memberships. These are for people all around the world, English speaking, that are interested in consciousness, wellness, and psychedelics. We have a bunch of resources there. As you can see, all of the content like we watched tonight gets filmed, edited, and posted, so people can watch that anytime on demand. And then we also have our partner Journey Home as our psychedelic concierge service. So they vet seekers and they vet guides and they make matches and they pair these people together. So people that are looking for a really safe entry point into psychedelic therapy or any other type forms of psychedelic guidance can use Journey Elm. They're fantastic. We have our Wednesday night memberships, the District House memberships, where we have interviews, roundtable conversations. Some people come and participate as a fly on the wall. Other people are very active. We do screenings, documentary screenings, and workshops. This was actually just from last week with our very own Hannah Jo, who ran an amazing sold-out workshop. That was great. Also, we have Marquee memberships, people that want to come to these events as well as the Wednesday nights. And again, edutainment. There's the edu, there's the tainment. And last but not least, if you're a brand or an organization that wants to get highlighted or spotlighted, we have business memberships. You can find us or talk to Paxton or Becca inside at the District 216 booth. So without further ado, I'm going to just briefly explain our run of show, and then we're going to bring up our fireside chat. Tonight, we're going to have Dr. Remi Drozd and Rebecca Ruiz in the fireside chat. Remi is actually the first District 216 speaker. We were in this parking lot on a hot Saturday in 2022. I had this crazy idea, and he said, sure, I'll give a lecture on ketamine. And so we had about 85 people show up on a hot Saturday, and it worked. And because of all those brave 85 people, we continued to do this, so it's your fault. And now it's full circle. We have him back. He's finally made it back on stage, so very excited to have him out here along with one of his patients, Rebecca, so we can all hear about what ketamine-assisted therapy can do. And I am also a patient. I forget the saying. I also tried it. It's great. After that, our discussion panel, we have a very dynamic discussion panel with folks with backgrounds, including psilocybin-assisted therapy and 5-MeO-DMT. This is going to be a fascinating talk, and Kat is going to moderate, so that's coming up right after. And then we have some music by Mr. Eos featuring Father Atlas. Then Kat is going to DJ, which we're always excited to have the embodiment of the night. And of course, Michael, we got to give him another shout out. Once it gets a little darker, you'll see his magic. It's pretty cool. And then last but not least, upstairs at 8 o'clock when the music starts, we have 2 workshops. Stone, who did our little breathwork intro, he's going to be leading the Body-Mind Integration Jam workshop upstairs. And then Shane Aspegren is going to be running our Ondo microsessions somatic sound, also upstairs. Both of these have optional microdoses from I Am Knowing, a new psilocybin brand that we are excited to have here tonight. They do have release forms if you want to do that. And thank you to all of our other sponsors. I want to give a special shout out to Dale. She wrote a book about herself and her own mental health journey as someone who's bipolar, and she's inside with her book. She's signing her books, and she was here on stage about a year and a half ago, and I said, you've got to come back and bring your books. So she's amazing. Go talk to her. If you have questions about can people who are bipolar use psilocybin mushrooms, talk to her. She's a personal anecdote around that. And thank you to all our partners here and to you, our community. Really appreciate y'all for being here tonight. So without further ado, let's bring up our fireside chat. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Jacob, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for having us up here today. And you know, I was really happy to see that Few's doing this topic. And actually, I saw what topic he was doing before he asked me to do this conversation, have this little lecture. But because it was so relatable. And to be honest, I was a physician for 15 years, and the reason I was burning out, or the reason I was getting disenchanted, because mental health was being completely, or rather, it was, the traditional system was failing mental health. The mental health wasn't working. And it was one of the biggest topics there between me and my colleagues. I realized that it wasn't the same. And, you know, and I'm young compared to some of my colleagues. So we were realizing that wasn't working. So I'm so glad that Jacob, you brought up this topic, because it's really near and dear to me. So my name is Dr. Remi Drozd, and I'm a former ER physician, and I have a psychedelic practice here in Santa Barbara. And today I'm thrilled to have a conversation about mental health, healing, and psychedelics. And to do that, I have a very special client and friend. And we'll take a little bit of time to discuss your story and your journey through mental health in a really casual way. And we'll have some time for questions at the end. So, Rebecca, maybe introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
I'm Rebecca, and born and raised in California, UCSB grad. I work in wellness and hospitality and am a wellness enthusiast, client of doctor's practice. Just share my story.
Great.
Yeah.
So grew up here, had a pretty traditional upbringing. Perfect. So before we met, tell us a little bit about how you navigated your mental health.
I saw a therapist, and right before it came to psychedelics, I was knee deep in PTSD from a fire. So couldn't really sleep through the night. I was really willing to try anything, but doing all of the conscious modalities and really looking for some healing to be able to sleep and get through my day, be my best self.
Perfect. So that, and I'll take a step back so that the people can find you more relatable and see. So you had it sounds like you had a trauma right before we met. But how were you growing up as a child? How was your college life? Did you use any of the traditional healthcare system back then?
I did. It wasn't until I got to college and started realizing there were some mental health concerns that we ran into, and saw a therapist, went through so many different medications, such as SSRIs. I went through 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and failed attempts, but that was my previous experience. I found one to find a baseline, but that was my experience before.
Sure. And would you say that it worked? Would you say for the most part that the Western model was working for you?
Western model has a lot of pros in the sense of it helped me create a baseline. It took a long time and a really amazing doctor, psychiatrist to be able to find that, which I'm really fortunate for. But there's limitations, or there was a wall, or I kept needing more, I guess is the better way to put it. As conscious as I was addressing that, I needed to go deeper.
So yeah, thanks for saying that. And I like the way you said that. You had a limitation and you needed more. And as a physician, I believe in Western medicine. If I had a coronary or need a knee replacement, there's no better place I'd rather be than the United States. And I think anywhere in the world, we have tools that work and tools that work not that well. And I think one thing we spoke about is she had when she was younger, she had a poor relationship, right? Someone threw meds at you and you kind of felt better and you had a lot of side effects and you didn't know where to find answers. But then you did have a relationship with a psychiatrist and you felt really seen and it was working. So it's not a bad system, but the beauty of psychedelics is just another tool that's heavily stigmatized, but it is another tool that can help you gain more depth when you hit a barrier. So on that note, can you tell me a little bit about when you felt that you might have been ready or curious about getting out of the traditional model and going a little deeper into psychedelic healing?
Sure. I went through the whole model and it was more conscious. I would ask myself questions, do the work. But you don't know what you don't know. So whatever my blind spots were, I couldn't really access those. I didn't know how to heal what I couldn't see. So that's what really made me more comfortable with exploring what those benefits could be. So I just sent an email and explored, and I found that it was right for me.
So it just sounded like there was a little bit of a threshold, but something triggered. Can you tell me what was it? Was there something? Did you watch a documentary? How did you gain the courage to say, "Whew, I'm going to do this thing my mom wouldn't want me doing"?
I broke that down way before that decision. So that wasn't the barrier. It was more cost, actually. So when I got an email saying, we're covered through insurance, which I already had explored that being just out of my reach to a degree. So I said, here's my insurance. Am I covered? And I was. So that really made it approachable or accessible.
So perfect. So we've been working together for like 9 months, and that's that. I'll be honest. There's a lot of modalities, and one of the benefits of what we're doing right now is we're making it more accessible, so that helps. So, but let's keep getting into it. Is there anything that surprised you about the process? So, I'll chat a little bit about where we're involved. My practice, all we do is legal psychedelic work, and the only psychedelic that's legal is ketamine and S-ketamine. So, we've been in a pretty regular, weekly in the beginning, and then every other twice a month-ish relationship of coaching and psychedelic treatments. Can you tell me a little bit about how it first impacted you? How did you appreciate it, or what did you not like about it?
It's a little confusing at first because I didn't really know what to expect. And the integration sessions helped because as I was coming up with realizations or explaining my experience of something that came up, whether it's a color, a symbol, I would then also connect it to a memory or something else. And it was aha moments in real time, which I had no clue I was going to actually have. And that was really fun in the sense to be able to find a benefit and immediate that I didn't necessarily think was there or just didn't know I would experience.
Yeah, beautiful. And is there something that surprised you about the process?
I was able to find peace about some challenging situations. That could be relationships, that could be work. That was a lot of things that came up throughout the 9 months. And I was able to see it through so many different perspectives and ways and symbols that I was able to find peace. And that was in a session, or I could go in feeling pretty depressed that day and leave just a little less. So both of those were surprises to me.
And one thing I'll also reflect that I watched Rebecca from the beginning to now is I felt like you came in here trying to find peace in your lane, but I found that the psychedelics inspired her as I would say, a really good therapy session. So this is analogous to just catalyzed therapy, but 10 years in 1 month or 6 months kind of analogies. She, instead of staying in that lane, you shifted lanes, became really courageous, made changes in your life. And what I witnessed was leveling up, rather than saying, well, how do I make this medicine better? It's how do you make your life better? And I witnessed that. Would you agree with that?
I definitely would agree. I found many points that I said, I do not think I would ever have had that conversation if I did not go through a session earlier that week, which I never put the 2 and 2 together until I'm explaining this conversation and what courage it took me. And wow, there's no way I would have had that 9 months prior. It's just, I found... And it was in retrospect. That's what was really interesting. I didn't know it while it was happening.
I'll ask you maybe your final question, and we'll leave it open to some questions. What's the thing you noticed most that's changed in your life? And is there a moment that stood out the most? You can answer both or choose one of those.
I ask myself this often. It's more subtle. It's more subtle in the sense of I have more resilience, so I notice it after the fact and find a sense of peace in situations I feel very anxious. Those are the two kind of main things.
Yeah, like maybe you're living more authentically.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what I witnessed in you, and but thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing your story and your honesty and your courage for being up here and talking about your life. And I'll open it to any questions from me or Rebecca while we're still up here, and our timer says 3 minutes. Yeah.
So my question is the difference between like doing the troches, like the daily ketamine dosage, because I did the daily ketamine dosage for a year, and it really was profoundly helpful for me, my family, my animals, my business, everything. I'm curious the comparison between that and the more alternate options. I don't know what to call it, but I'm just curious, like the contrasting benefits, maybe the trade-offs, as my mom says, everything's a trade-off. So I'd be curious, what's the trade-off?
Yeah, I like the way you prompted that. The trade-off is, well, I'll first speak to IV and IM have a much higher peak concentration in the bloodstream, so it is a very profoundly psychedelic. But constant use in a safe container, I'd say, is almost more therapeutic. Psycholytic or lower psychedelic treatment weekly in a therapeutic container, I found is the best treatment. People that are really self-motivated, people that are good, people that can work out in their own gym in the garage and stay fit, can do the troches at home. People that need to go to the fitness class and be yelled at, they do better with us. The truth is, everyone does better going to a place that feels like a spa for 2 hours, blocking out their schedule, telling their boss they have a doctor's appointment, going to their therapy session during, before, after. So the container is robust. So we kind of force you into a program, and you like it. People with troches, do you end up bringing one to a party? Do you end up like, does your friend want one? All of a sudden, does the barriers between therapeutic intentional use versus I've got ketamine in my refrigerator gets blurred. So both could be very helpful. It's about accountability, really.
Have you done Remi's daily doing?
Personally, just in one training, I've tried them. It's a very strong psycholytic experience. IV and IM, and then even nasal, is released so much quicker in the bloodstream. It's more psychedelic.
Thank you.
Of course. We have another question over here. Maybe have one more. I'm not sure.
Oh, I could just speak to that based on personal experience. I did some in-offices with you, which was amazing. And then I did the Troche at home. My wife was fertilizing, and that interrupted the experience. There was, it's just like whatever odors are around, and then that becomes part of your trip. And so it's not that sacred container. So it's better than nothing, but I really appreciated the in-office. So yeah, that's my big difference.
All right, Bri, there's one more question right behind you, and then we'll finish it up.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for sharing. If I might ask, what form were you doing? Were you doing this Spravato? Because that's what's covered under insurance.
Yes, I do.
Spravato is S-ketamine. So if we're talking about mental wellness and traditional, for 2.5 years, and when I met Jacob 3 years ago, all we did is intramuscular and an IV ketamine, and it was not covered insurance at all, and it was very interesting. But the truth is, the limiting factor was, no matter who you are, if it's expensive, you're just going to look for the endpoint and then step back. And so many people that I would say were astounding success stories over time drifted back to their common patterns. And it's kind of like just not going to therapy anymore because they're cured. You kind of need it. This is your in practice. Ketamine and psychedelics, I'd say all psychedelics, unless you're in a situational problem, a divorce, a financial loss, a single event, a trauma, that the psychedelics will help that situation and give you distance behind it, and you're back on your feet. And if you're well-resourced, you're back on your feet. It worked. But if you've got trauma throughout your life, if you have a really hard childhood, if you identify with chronic depression, treatment-resistant depression, then having a program and being treated a little bit every month for especially if it's covered by insurance, becomes something more effective. And I'll say, even though I really minimized and thought that the nasal sprays, a covered by insurance model will not work, it's actually a better model because people are in it all year, and it's still psychedelic, and I'm learning, 3 years in, I'm still learning every week on how to best create value for people that are looking for healing and in a non-traditional way. And I'm a fan of both.
All right, give it up. Back in. Thank you so much, everyone. We're going to start part 2. And this is about mental wellness and psychedelics. Now, what I love that we started with ketamine is because ketamine is available right now. And much of what we're going to be talking about is also now expanding upon what other molecules right now are being used for mental health. What are the types of mental health conditions that are being addressed right now, right? Like, what are we doing here? And also going into some of the reasons why psychedelics can uniquely work as opposed to something just like talk therapy. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce our panelists. First up on here, right over here, we have Lyubov Yusufova. Lyubov is initiated yoga and a Doctor of Psychology candidate at CIIS. Lyubov bridges Eastern contemplative practices with Western psychology to explore the therapeutic mechanisms of mystical states of consciousness. So actually studying this in a Western context, these mystical states. So Lyubov, welcome. Next up, we have Duran. Duran is a 5-MeO advocate who supports ethical, intentional psychedelic use and helps to expand awareness around the importance of integration, safety, and trauma-informed approaches in healing. Duran, welcome. And right here next to me, we have Erica Salyn. She's a registered nurse with 15 years of emergency department experience. Erica integrates traditional nursing with holistic modalities, advocating for the therapeutic potential of psychedelics in mental health care. Erica, welcome. I'd like to begin with our system right now and understanding what is the current blind spots of our modern mental health care system, and how do psychedelics begin to address them in ways that conventional treatments don't? Duran?
I too come from a nursing background, and one of the great frustrations that I experienced was the feeling that I had pills to give to people, but they seemed to only really dull the symptoms that people were suffering from, and didn't really do much to get to the root of the problem, where the trauma lie, where the wounding took place. And so I see that as part of the blind spot. Then there's also the tendency we have to want to label things. With the advent of the DSM, we got into this situation where we are almost forced to label people, and people are complex. They don't always fit in those little boxes that we need to give them so that insurance companies will cover their treatment. So I see that as a huge blind spot in our current system.
Lyubov, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that firstly, Western medicine seems to be predicated on getting rid of pain, but that's not the same as healing. Healing is actually about being able to be with pain. Unfortunately, the ego tends to keep a tight lid on unpleasant emotions and pain. It's not so much that the memory of a trauma may be repressed, but the memories associated with it will be. And psychedelics kind of disrupt those egoic defenses and allow that painful material that's normally repressed and out of conscious awareness into conscious awareness. And secondly, I would just say that I don't think that modern mental health care is very concerned with the existential dimensions of suffering, so things like mortality and meaning and purpose. But psychedelics, elicit these mystical experiences that are ego-dissolving experiences that can really offer someone that deep sense of humility that can really make you reevaluate your values and your life.
Beautifully said. I mean, psychedelics is the big paradigm shift, right? Because if you think about who's been in a ceremony before, a big ceremony, a lot of times there's crying and it can be uncomfortable and painful, right? Like the idea of our medicine that we would actually willingly go into an experience like that in order to heal is a complete shift. Even with microdosing. I feel like microdosing, people forget, they think you're going to pop it like a pill, and then you realize, oh wait, no, it just amplifies my emotions. And I have something to do with today suddenly. So psychedelics as a whole is also a re-education for people around how to embrace the suffering, right? Or how to embrace pain or discomfort in order to move through these and not have the monster hiding under the bed.
I completely agree with you, Lyubov. That's a great description. I think that when people try to avoid discomfort, and especially their emotional discomfort, it leads them to be disconnected from the authentic part of themselves that makes the human experience worth living. There's a lot of suffering involved in disconnection from that aspect of ourselves.
Erica, I'm curious, as somebody who was in the ER, and I recently learned how often people would come into the ER for a mental health crisis because they didn't know where to turn. How is our current system handling this situation? What are they doing? What was the protocol?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk basics of blind spots in this current system, right? How often do you Google a mental health care clinic and they're closed at 5? So then people, when they're in a crisis, they go to the ER. And then what about the stigma that comes with going to the ER for mental health crisis? The people that show up at the doorstep in the ER that are so embarrassed and ashamed of coming there for care is really sad. It's definitely, it's not the best place for them, right? There's got to be something more. And that's what I was seeing a lot. It's where do these people go? They turn to the ER. And so it's about educating, I think, those people in the ER. And that's a big thing, I think, that's a blind spot, that is the communication between the ER. And then where do those people go after? Where do they go after that care? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Then what often happens is because these people go to the hospital in duress, having a crisis, then yet another med is added to their med list, which increases the possibility that they may act in very psychotic ways because the meds get mixed up. And it's much more difficult to understand what's really going on when you're just dealing with trying to uncover all of the different side effects of the different medications that have been provided.
And this is even outside of just psychedelics, right? Because we're talking about, this is with all the tools we have, the fact that there's really no way to support people that are coming in, what's a follow-up? If you're coming in really thinking that this might be the end and this is your last stop, you even just check them out. This is some bigger questions, and we're thankfully at a time where I think these conversations are happening more and more.
I think that'll reveal. Yep. Hello? Okay, that's better. Okay. I think what's really cool that I've started to do some research around using ketamine in the ER for a crisis and emergency situation. I mean, yes, healthcare providers in the ER are going to need more education on how to properly set up that session for that person in crisis in the ER. But I think over time, it might be a really good option.
That point. So I'm curious about the psychedelic experience itself and the why. Why do we think psychedelics have this type of healing? What about the psychedelic experience might be part of the massive breakthrough of healing that we're seeing, whether it's scientific, spiritual, experiential? What do you feel is really the thing that is creating the healing in the psychedelic experience. Any of you can jump in.
Yes. Body, mind, spirit need to be addressed to have real healing. And it's not just a psychedelic experience, it's that there needs to be psychedelic assisted psychotherapy and to help with the integration and the incorporation of the experience so that we're not just using psychedelics as we've used Western medicine to treat symptoms for a quick relief or release, and then people attribute the power to the psychedelic. That's a concern that I have.
Absolutely.
Well, just according to the latest research, there is still no single unifying theory that explains how psychedelics impact the brain and consciousness. There are a few theories and they're all interrelated. One key theory is ego dissolution. So during ego dissolution, a network in the brain called the default mode network, which is usually kind of organizing the way brain regions are communicating with each other. During an ego dissolution, it kind of quiets or goes offline. And so now you have brain regions that are normally separated communicating with each other, and especially with the limbic regions of the brain, which are implicated in emotion and memory. And that's how you get all this repressed material that surfaces. And that's how you get what's in the literature known as emotional breakthroughs, which is another theory. And then we also have, neuroplasticity, which the psychedelics can kind of induce this psychological flexibility that opens up a space for someone to have a new perspective. But I would say, just maybe from a more spiritual perspective, and what I think is the unifying theory is that psychedelics elicit a state of surrender, and all of the world's spiritual practices are rooted in the act of surrendering control. And so much of what was just said happens during surrender. You get the emotions that surface, and the new perspectives that can emerge, and also you can let go of your sense of self.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's one of my favorite parts of working with people is that after safety has been established, a feeling of trust and safety, we get to explore how the individual has come to tell the story of who they think they've had to be in order to feel safe and loved in the world. And we get to explode some myths that have developed around those, some storylines that may not be true, that maybe were true at one point in time, but no longer serve. And that seems to be a point of great breakthrough when a person is able to examine those parts of themselves with a lot of compassion and love for self. And then, with that acceptance, decide whether they want to continue to be in that same pattern or shift.
Beautiful, Sabi. Irfa, I'd like to, as somebody who actually takes people through ketamine experiences, what do you see coming out of that?
It's pretty amazing. I'll speak personally to it first, actually having done ketamine myself. Like you guys were just speaking to, having that separation, that distance from those stories of what you were told in the past, and being able to get that experience of seeing yourself apart from those experiences and then choosing and breaking down the default mode network, and letting other places and other parts of your brain play and evolve and grow is pretty fantastic. And that's kind of what we see too in the clinic. As a nurse, caring is at the core of what we're doing, and that's why we get into it. And so having that time and that space with patients and being able to get to know them on a very deep level and to go through that with them and be there for them, it's pretty magical. It's pretty great. And to be just an advocate, we're in healthcare. right? We can be advocates for ourselves, but not everybody has that. Not everybody has somebody that knows what they need or knows how to ask for what they need. So it's a pretty nice space to be in.
I also want to add, it's I had interviewed someone about MDMA therapy for PTSD, and what he speaks to around how it was effective as well was, if you ever done MDMA, it feels really fucking good, right? There's so much dopamine and serotonin flooding the system. So when he was in a therapeutic context, he was able to go into some of those really scary places. He was a veteran. And because he was surrounded, he called it I was like wrapped in a blanket of just like safety from a chemical compound of safety, right? That was created for him, where it wasn't the fight or flight response inside of himself wasn't going off. And so you can see, I can imagine with ketamine as well, being a dissociative, that can also have a similar aspect. And the one area I also want to add in is God. I think a lot of people have a mystical experience, whatever you want to call it. But I think for me, psychedelics connected me back to the divine. And within that reconnection, everything changed, right? And so this is so layered about why. There's the neuroplasticity, there's the revisiting, there's so much there.
Finding that unity experience where you locate the divine within yourself allows a person to heal themselves. And that's a beautiful thing to behold.
And I understand that, and that I'm sorry if I understand that spirituality is not for everyone, but it's something that I always used to shy away from talking about it because it's such a tricky one for some. But I think we're doing a disservice to not talk about the full spectrum of what happens in a lot of these experiences. I'd like Lyubov, I asked her to do this. This is actually not necessarily her specialty, where she's studying, but I think it's important to really talk about just high level, like what are some of the molecules that they are studying for specific mental health conditions right now that you're seeing with the research?
So MDMA is particularly studied in the context of PTSD because of its ability to reduce fear and increase trust and empathy. So it makes processing some really difficult emotions more tolerable. Psilocybin is usually, we see it studied with treatment-resistant depression and obsessive compulsive disorder and end-of-life anxiety because of its ability to induce cognitive flexibility, and so it can kind of disrupt those habitual patterns of thought, those ruminative thought loops that we see in depression and OCD, and of course the mystical experience for the end-of-life anxiety. And then, LSD more or less is the same as psilocybin, except we also see it studied for cluster headaches. And then ketamine is particularly known for its rapid relief for suicidality and depression. So we usually see it in that context. And then ayahuasca we see for trauma and addiction and depression because of its ability to elicit emotional catharsis and kind of catalyze that deep insight. And Ibogaine is pretty much exclusively we see studied for substance use disorders, just because of its ability to disrupt the withdrawals and cravings, and it's really just kind of seen as a way to reset addiction circuitry. But with all that being said, just to put my own twist on it, I don't think that any one of these particular substances can't have broader uses. I think it's important to remember the nature of clinical research is that it demands specificity. So you have to study how a particular substance affects a particular diagnosis. Research is about isolating variables. So it's like, how does substance X affects substance Y. And then once you show that, then more research gets funded to study that particular substance for that particular diagnosis, because it's kind of a catch-22, and you need research only really gets funded when you already show that there's efficacy for that particular substance and diagnosis. But because the nature of psychological disorder is that it's really an avoidance of confrontation with pain, and the disorder itself is just a way to, it's like a coping mechanism to avoid that pain. All psychedelics have the capacity to facilitate that confrontation. So I think, like I said, I think all psychedelics can have broader uses than what the research necessarily shows.
That's a powerful context to give as well.
May I?
Yes, please.
In the work that I do with my partner, after a very, very careful intake process where I get to know what the person's issues are and how best to approach them, I use a stacking and sequencing method. So I have many tools in my toolbox, and some of the ways in which they are best utilized are exactly what you said, depending on whether the chief complaint is anxiety or depression or suicidal ideation. That tells me a lot about the person and where they're stuck. And besides just a current history, I like to find out what happened to them in the early part of their lives. What was their family life like? What kind of stress were they subjected to in childhood? Is there any kind of sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional, physical, etc., etc.? All of these things are very important to take into consideration when you're working with people and opening their mind with these substances that are very, very powerful, and tremendous care needs to be taken.
You were really so naturally spoke to exactly what I want to talk about, specifically about 5-MeO-DMT, which is one of the most powerful psychedelic experiences that we know of right now. And I would love to stay on this subject, if you don't mind. Who is 5-MeO best suited for? This can be from both mental health, like where are you seeing it shine, like for particular things, and is it also not right for some?
My apprenticeship was with people who were in special operations forces, people who had been under extreme duress in their lives, also elite athletes, also C-suite executives, people who had become so good at not feeling their feelings, distancing themselves from physical as well as emotional and psychological pain, that is a wonderful population. But I also find that it works very well with anxiety, with depression, with just the people that I encounter who tell me that the main problem they're having is a midlife crisis, where they're suffering from anhedonia, the inability to find joy, to feel joy. They're stuck. And that's why I often get people who are referred to me by their therapists, because the therapists are starting to get more and more psychedelically informed, and they're recognizing that there's a little bit of a stuckness there that psychedelics can help unstick, unlock.
So everybody. Yeah, right. Exactly. Erica. Before I even ask you this question, I have to say, I realized when Erica was on this panel that I had never heard from a nurse in the psychedelic space. Like, I'd never actually heard from the person that's administering psychedelics to people. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful opportunity to actually hear what you feel the role of a nurse is. Especially, it's not just going to be ketamine. There's going to be other molecules coming down the pipeline, right? You have a doctor that talks about it, but ultimately, you're the one that's in there with them. What do you feel is the role of the nurse?
I mean, like you spoke to before, I think it's a big advocacy role. as everyone already probably knows, when you see your doctor, you see them for 10, 15 minutes. And then if you're in the ER, you see the nurse for the rest of the time, right? We get to build that better relationship and that more in-depth relationship with the client. So we get to do the physical. So giving the injection, starting the IV, we have that relationship and that safety and that trust with the patient, right? That maybe the doctor doesn't have. Some doctors are getting much better at it, but some are not so great. I think, and then being there and being the advocate for them.
Thank you. Lyubov, I want to get a little bit now into your work and give you an opportunity to really talk about, I know ego death is something that you had shared with me can radically shift our relationship with pain, suffering, and even the idea of mortality. And I guess the question to you is, why is that a crucial piece to healing? Why do you feel, and you touched on a little bit, but and psychedelics' role in this?
So the unique predicament of being human is that we are aware and we are self-aware and we're aware of being aware. Research has shown that there are some animals like apes and dolphins and elephants that have some degree of this, but not that true reflective self-awareness that humans experience, the way we kind of create a narrative around our identity and engage in meaning making and existential reflection. There's no non-human species that does that. And so a lot of our anguish and suffering is rooted in that awareness. I think that, a lot of the suffering is, if you start making interpretations about your mortality and your suffering, if you start to assign meaning to it, you create a deeper relationship to that pain. There's been studies that show that when you kind of induce self-awareness in people, so you make them look in a mirror, their mortality salience increases, which means they become more aware of the inevitability of their own death, and vice versa. When people are more aware of their mortality, they will avoid looking in a mirror. Existential psychologists will say that the fear of death is actually at the root of all psychological disorders on an unconscious level. So it's not that we're aware of it. And to confront that fear can actually catalyze radical personal transformation in someone's life. And so where psychedelics come in, if our deepest need is to kind of rid ourselves of that fear of mortality, and the way you overcome a fear is by confronting it, then transcendent experiences really offer a compelling approach to psychotherapy. Because the hallmark subjective experience of psychedelics is a psychological death, right? It's an ego death. And I would just add that ego-dissolving spiritual practices are rooted in, they're about training yourself to surrender control. They're actually consider a preparation for death, because they're about learning to surrender control. And there's a lot of value in learning to surrender control insofar as how it can really enrich the quality of your life.
When I was working as a nurse, I only wish I could have given some of my patients something to help alleviate the fear and the anxiety that they were experiencing. And now I actually do get to work with people at the end of their lives or when they have advanced disease states. And I would say the main thing that they come away with is that they're not so afraid of dying, because they understand on a very profound level that they are more than their bodies. That's liberating.
Correct. Yeah. Duran, I'd like to stay with you on this. I'd like to talk about trust. So much of anxiety comes from not trusting that life is going to work out for us, or that it's not going to work out the way that we hoped. And I'm curious, how does a deep psychedelic experience like 5-MeO-DMT help someone let go, right, and surrender, and meet life then with more openness and faith?
The way that I work with it, if you've done any research on 5-MeO, you may have read about a more classic version of delivery, which is in a glass vial. And with that method, it's usually a very strong dose. So it's like a rocket ship. And people often experience ego dissolution and a feeling of unity, but it's a very, very strong change of their nervous system, the state of their nervous system. I don't work like that. I don't think that's helpful for the vast majority of people. I like to work with it very low and slow, and the journeyer is in total control of how far they go and how deep they go, how quickly they go. And I will never, ever push anyone beyond their comfort zone. But the reason that I'm such a strong advocate for this particular molecule is because it has a very short half-life. And so you are in and out of that deep zone where you're feeling connection with your unconscious. So you're able to process the insights that are arising in real time. And that helps a person develop trust for themselves, which is often missing. They're then able to question the things that have helped cause their suffering.
Yeah, I realize I didn't properly, for those of you who might not know what 5-MeO-DMT is, I would love for you to talk about how long actually is an experience like that, and what is, how does one do it? What is the application? I mean, I know it's around smoking it, but I'd love for anyone that might have never heard of that term before, just kind of have a brief understanding of what is it?
Because I'm part of the underground, I would feel a lot more comfortable talking about this privately. So anybody who's really curious, please see me or my handsome partner over there hiding in the corner. We'll be happy to answer more questions.
All right, so this is for the group. Erica, I'd love for you to start with this one, though. When it comes to depression, I think we all know that exercise, sunlight, water helps. But if you're in the throes of depression and you can't muster the energy to even get outside, to do the things, to even get the ball rolling, are there any psychedelics that can actually help create momentum? Can they actually help us get into it so we can then start the things, the deeper work?
I love that question, Kat. I think, just pondering on that question, there are psychedelics that are perceptual and subperceptual, right? You microdose psilocybin or you microdose other psychedelics, you might not feel it. So someone who is in the midst of depression maybe heard about, hey, let's try some microdoses. It doesn't feel anything. They're not going to get very much out of that. So for me personally, I think doing a dose of something, ketamine is amazing, that radically shifts you, but in a very gentle way still, and you don't get shot off into space onto a rocket ship. And I think that might be a good catalyst for someone to get into that ball, or get that ball rolling to start doing more things for themselves.
Anything else you two want to add? Any particular psychedelic that you think could be a nudge, or do you think psychedelics come after the nudge?
I think it's a slippery slope to ascribe those powers to psychedelics, because it really needs to come from a shift within yourself. And if you feel that it's the molecule, it's the substance that's giving you that drive and desire, you have disempowered yourself.
I do agree. It definitely has to be that conscious choice, right? Speaking from personal, I have a very great partner, and he, a year ago, was like, hey, what's wrong with you? Something's different. What changed? And so I went to my PCP, my primary care doctor, and said, he did the screening, which was great, gave me an SSRI. And then from there, it was like, okay, this is great. However, I'm just kind of not feeling much of anything at all. And so that was my nudge from myself. But you have to be aware of it. I think like a lot of mental health problems, right? It first comes from that person being aware and that person being self-aware and choosing for themselves and to help themselves too.
Actually, before I get into this little game that I have, I'd actually like to go to your question first because it's on this. You had mentioned to me that women between 35 and 45 that we're seeing a spike in SSRIs. How much of this is actually hormonal? And can ketamine offer something radically different? Is ketamine like, kind of speaking to exactly what you're saying, is like, if not an SSRI, is ketamine something that could be helpful in the process?
Also something very near and dear to my heart. I'm not sure those exact ages. However, there are statistics that show that women are prescribed in menopause and perimenopause like a twofold in SSRIs and antidepressants. And then women also are prescribed antidepressants and SSRIs double the amount that men are. And so during those changes and during those shifts in perimenopause and menopause, right, your estrogen levels are decreasing, and estrogen plays a huge role in serotonin, dopamine in your brain, in your gut. And so when those levels of those neurotransmitters diminish, it can sometimes throw people into bouts of depression. And so exploring that in psychedelics and helping women through this transition too is also something that's very near and dear to me. And yes, I think ketamine, like we've kind of talked about, once you've explored other options on how to help yourself out of that depression or anxiety or whatever it is you're experiencing, ketamine is something that can help you remove that part of yourself that you were and go through this transition and find a new piece of yourself and a new, I don't want to say new human, but like a new just soul that you didn't really know was there and that was waiting for you to be discovered.
Beautiful. All right, let's play a game. We're going to lighten it up a little bit. It's the game where I'm going to say a word and you're going to say the first thing that comes to your head. It doesn't like go with the first word, and it doesn't even have to make sense. I won't ask you to justify it unless it's like really super interesting, and then maybe. All right? Erica, psychedelics. First word comes to your mind.
Colors.
Lyubov. Divine. Duran.
Compassion.
Excellent. Next word. Duran. Healing.
Joy.
Beautiful. Erica?
Wait, what was the word?
Healing. First word. There's like no words.
The word is on the tip of my tongue, but I can't get it out.
Lyubov. You could love. You could just like to say freedom. She's gonna come out like 10 minutes now. She's gonna be like freedom. It was for my word. All right, I'm just kidding. The next word, Lyubov, surrender.
God. Peace.
Trust.
Beautiful. We got two more. Consciousness.
Infinity.
Awareness.
I'm going to go with God again.
All right, last one. Integration, Duran.
Incorporation.
Beautiful.
Difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Essential.
Amen to that. All right, just a round of applause for essential, joy, God. Good job. All right. We got a few more questions, all right? And we're going to open it up for the floor. What do we have here? Duran.
Yes, ma'am.
When we talk about safety, Who is this work not right for? Oh, you said everyone. Dang it. I wasn't prepared for, but is there anyone for real? Like, is there if, let's say schizophrenia, bipolar, right? Like are there any where you have ever, that you would say like, probably not for them right now? Or even where they're at in their life?
Schizophrenia or people with very, very disorganized kind of behavior, I would be very careful about, and I would certainly speak with their doctors and their family members. People, in my experience, who have had a diagnosis of bipolar disorder often don't necessarily meet all the criteria. It's they started out depressed or anxious, and they got more medication and so on and so forth. So it depends. After a very careful history taking, and I check all the meds that they're on, and so that is a contraindication if they're still on meds. Benzodiazepines, if they're actively drinking alcohol and using cannabis a great deal, I need to have them wean off of those medicines. I will speak with their psychiatrist or their whoever the prescribing doctor is to make sure that there are no contraindications. So, yeah, that's a part of the safety and trust that's essential.
Beautiful. Lyubov, you've studied Kundalini energy. You've studied that Kundalini energy can rise spontaneously during deep psychedelic states. What do you feel is happening in the body when that energy moves biologically and maybe spiritually? What are you seeing with that experience, and how can an experience like Kundalini rising actually create and facilitate healing?
So there's a psychedelic research lab in the Netherlands that came up with the psychedelic Kundalini hypothesis, which says that the therapeutic effects of psychedelics can actually be scientifically studied from the perspective of how they alter someone's chakra system. And those alterations are a result of the Kundalini energy rising. And just to clarify, the chakras are energy centers that are along the base of the spine, and in yogic and tantric traditions. And the Kundalini energy is a dormant energy that sits at the base of the spine, and when it gets activated and it starts rising up through the chakras and kind of transforms and activates each one. So when there is enough surrender, whether it's through really deep states of meditation or psychedelic medicine, the body will start to release, because you're just allowing for whatever to arise. So there may be like sobbing or jerking movements or writhing or shaking, and those are all they're healing. They're known as these spontaneous involuntary movements that in yoga we call kriyas. And when the Kundalini energy rises, it kind of creates a portal into hell, because you're purging this deeply embedded trauma and karma. In yoga, karma is just these mental tendencies and impressions that we all have from our past experiences that influence our present and future behavior. And in psychology, we just call it conditioning or imprints. And in the same way, your past experiences, particularly your early childhood ones, impacts your present and future behavior unless you do something to address it. So the Kundalini energy, as it rises, it clears that karma and trauma through the energy channels to prepare the body and mind for higher states of consciousness. And I guess to translate it into a Western frame, if anyone has read Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, trauma is not just stored in the mind, but it's stored in the body as well, in the nervous system, in the muscles, even in cellular memory. And if it's not addressed, it can cause physical and mental disease. So yeah, I would say that, talk therapy alone doesn't always access those wounds. But that if you surrender enough resistance in your body and mind, the deep catharsis will often manifest in involuntary physical movements that are very healing.
Yes, Aisa. I ask people before we go to work to give themselves permission to have an energetic release by whatever means necessary, as it looks different in different people. Yeah.
Ladies, thank you so much. We are out of time, but I want to open it up for at least a few questions before we wrap things up. Does anyone have a question? Yes, Maya.
Do we have?
Please.
Hello. First, I want to say thank you so much to the moderator and the speakers. This has just been such a pleasure to listen to you all. Brilliant takings everywhere. What I wanted to bring in, it was first inspired by Duran when you were talking about the healing of the mind, body, soul, and then you referred to how the nervous system regulation, your approach requires that gentle safety and trust into it. And the Kundalini energy also speaks to how the mind-body connection really has this trauma-informed understanding of how it physically embodies. And this is a very somatic understanding, and psychedelics are very somatic. And so, Duran, I was hoping to hear more of your thoughts on how you understand the mind-body connection and how your work is related to the nervous system regulation that you brought up.
Thank you. What is your name?
My name is Hannah.
Anna?
Hannah.
Thank you for that question. My understanding is that we have our autonomic nervous system, and in healthy individuals, we swing between sympathetic and parasympathetic. When we're resting and digesting, parasympathetic. When we need to find some energy, fight, flight, get stuff done, we're in a sympathetic state. Over the course of our lifetimes, when we feel a sense of threat, anxiety, too much tension for whatever reasons, whether they're something that we are telling ourselves or just from this culture that we live in, that's enough to drive us into sympathetic dominance a great deal of the time. And over time, we lose the flexibility of that autonomic nervous system, and we get stuck in sympathetic dominance. And anybody who's ever had a panic attack or has suffered with an anxiety disorder knows that feeling where you're telling yourself, calm down, calm down, calm down, and you can't get there. Breathing techniques really help. I'm a great fan of the vagus nerve stimulation, and I love Stephen Porges' work on polyvagal theory. I recommend that if you're interested. But that's my understanding.
We are out of time, folks. Give it up for our panelists. Ladies, thank you so much. Really. I'd like to give a quick, just if you want to go down, if there's any way that you want anybody to reach out to you, if you're online, if you're not, and you just want people to come up to you here, just let us know. Lyubov?
You can just Google my name and you'll find my website, LyubovYusufova.com, and you can reach out to me through there.
This is by far the most public I've ever been. I count on your discretion. And I'd be happy to take information and exchange phone numbers with anybody who's interested in knowing more. My partner, Christopher, is also available. And I would love, he didn't want to be included in this. He's a very, yeah, wave your hand, Christopher, please, or stand up, will you please? There you are. Yes. So, more later. Thank you.
You can find me on Instagram. That's all I got. Yes, or come up to me here. But Google my name. That's my Instagram. So send me a DM. My account is private, but just shoot me a message and I'll follow you or send you a message back.
And she's also at a spa called Modern Med in Burbank, and they do ketamine too, right?
Yes, Mod Meds. It's an integrative medicine clinic in Burbank. It's amazing. It's a little far removed from here, but it's really great. So yeah, you can Google me on there too.
And my socials everywhere is Life with Kat Walsh. Thank you all so much again. And now stick around, get a drink, because now we're going to have some fun. And we're going to dance.